Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors, and if you're new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community, and without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. The next one is titled, "Entitled Neighbor's Driveway Encroached Over My Property Line. I built a fence and blocked him in." Next to my home lives a man that seems to have a lot of money that he enjoys spending on himself. He does not seem to have kids, so it is just his wife and him to spend money on all sorts of luxury things. This alone does not bother me because I have no idea where his money comes from, but I guess he earned it and can spend it however he wants. The problem really is that my neighbor is a huge jerk, not only to me, but everyone else that he comes in contact with. When I go to work, he likes to laugh about how I work all day and still drive an old car that has no style. He can clearly see that I have 3 kids and obviously will put most of my money into that instead, and it doesn't end there. He always complains when my kids are playing on the lawn, saying how they are going to ruin something, and even though it is my property, it will somehow make him look bad. His wife is always telling my wife that her husband is the greatest because he buys her designer stuff and I could learn a thing or two from her husband. Somebody telling my wife that I'm not a good husband because I cannot afford to get her the best brands really rubs me the wrong way. From what I can hear from some friends around town, when he is out and about, he is also at the store commenting when people buy things that are more on the cheaper side. The thing I hate the most though is one thing that he always does with his car in the driveway. He likes to rev it very loudly for no reason at very odd hours and wake everybody up. One time I had to run out at like 2 in the morning telling him to knock it off because it was the middle of the night and it woke up me and all of my kids. If you have never tried getting a 2-year-old back to sleep after being woken up, let me tell you that it's not an easy thing. When I would go out to tell him, he would intentionally rev it even louder and act like he could not even hear what I was saying. Oh, why don't I just talk to him when he is not in the car being an a-hole? Well, I thought that too and tried to go over and talk to him when I saw him one day. It did not end well and was just more crap about me being jealous and that he was not going to dial back his life so I could feel better about myself. So I wanted some revenge on this guy to teach him a lesson, and I had what I thought was a good idea. Not only did he like to deal with his car at odd hours, but he also liked to leave the top of his car down even when he wasn't in it. This gave me an evil idea and I decided to take his advice to spend a little money on something luxury. My garden was next to the driveway and I decided that it really deserved some sprinklers as close to his car as I could get while still being on my property. If you cannot see where I'm going with this, I was planning on setting the sprinklers to go off in the middle of the night and get him and his car interior soaked. The only issue was I did not know exactly where my property started and his began, I just knew it was in that general area. I was friends with the guy who does surveying for the town though, and he agreed to come out and unofficially take a look at where the line was so I could install the sprinklers. What he found was so much better and put a stop to my plans for water-based revenge. So I need to pause the story to tell you how exactly his driveway is shaped. The start of it is in the direction of my house and then goes back towards his. Maybe think of like a question mark but upside down and without the dot. My friend told me that the starting part of the driveway was actually all considered my land and he had built his driveway thinking that the whole thing belonged to him. If it was anybody else, I honestly would not have cared they were doing it and let them since things like that don't bother me. Since it was this horrible man though, I wanted to get revenge and I thought of something better that would also not potentially cause me getting sued for car damage. I built a fence that went right through his driveway and now he did not really have any way to enter it through the street. As you can guess, he was not happy that I did this and started screaming about how I cannot do this and the driveway is on his land and he is going to get me sued. I calmly told him that if he gets a survey saying that the driveway is on his land, I will take down the fence right away. He tried and found that I was right and my fence was allowed to stand because it was on my property. He was fuming and telling me that he had to take the fence down because there was no other way for him to park his car on his property. There was really no good way for him to go around either, because his gate was in the way and if he tried going around on my side, a tree would block him. I don't know what I'm going to do next because I know that he's not going to stay parked on the streets forever. My guess is that he will build a new driveway that is totally on his property. For now though, at least I can sleep with my family and not worry about this guy making crazy noise with his car in the middle of the night. I think whatever they are planning to do about it is costing them a lot of money, because I noticed that his wife, while still dressing in fancy clothing, is wearing stuff that's a little bit cheaper. I don't know what he's going to do once he gets back, but I always have that sprinkler idea in my back pocket if he wants to start with me again. They have stopped talking to us completely, which I think is a miracle, because I was sick of being told how to take care of my wife by this jerk. I hope he learned that when a guy nobody likes messes with somebody who has friends all over town, it can end with you getting into some serious trouble. And yeah, Ripe stars once again an entitled rich person that decides to mess with others purely because he thinks that he can afford everything, ends with him totally getting embarrassed. That is the kind of revenge stories that I enjoy. Either way, if you like the stories about crazy neighbors and entitled people, then please don't forget to like the video and maybe even subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thank you so much in advance. And the next one is titled, Don't Trespass, Dude. So we have a cabin in upstate PA, very secluded, the land is posted keep out private property. The only way in is over a bridge that we built at great expense, and people are constantly trespassing. They think nothing of driving up right to the house and sitting on the porch using the outside water and taking firewood. I got a neighbor who keeps an eye on the place. He called one day and said there were people with 3 tents set up. He asked if I knew them. No, I don't. Please ask them to leave. So he drove over to their campsite and gave them the work to move along. They cussed him out and told him they were set up and not going anywhere. He called me back and gave me the scoop. I said, okay, so how about you dump a truckload of horse manure on the bridge? They will be screwed big time. So he dumped the manure and drove away. Hours later, the state police came to my neighbor's farm and asked if he knew about the bridge being blocked. And he told them he did it at my request because the campers were refusing to leave and that they cussed him out. After a good laugh, the cop asked for a shovel and wheelbarrow and took it to them and told them they have 3 hours to move the manure or would be arrested for trespassing and burning on private property. The police instructed the campers to move the poop into a pile in the field and scrape it off the bridge. My neighbor made a video of the event and it's the funniest thing I've ever seen. And yeah, Ripe stars, certainly these campers did not know that you never mess with a farmer or his friends in this case. I guess they learned their lesson. But then again, seriously, who just trespasses on someone else's property, gets comfortable and even starts camping? That would certainly not be me. The next one is titled, Entitled Neighbor and My Garden. Well, I should have known that no good deed goes unpunished. We have a small vegetable and herb garden in the corner of our yard. 2 neighbors have the ability and my permission to reach over the fence and snip off any herbs they need. We always grow much more than we can use. One neighbor has been doing it for years with no problems. He takes a sprig or 2 a few times a week and always asks if he needs more than usual. He repays me in beautiful roses, but I would have no problem with not getting them in return. The other neighbor never cooked, so he never took any. Now he has a new girlfriend and she happened to introduce herself while I was planting the herbs, so I offered her some once it has a chance to grow a bit. So of course 2 weeks after I planted, she snips off all but a few leaves off of every herb. 2 weeks! I was livid. My BF went over and explained that it was too soon, the plants were tiny, not ready, etc. and he is much nicer than I am. The neighbor apologized profusely and said the girlfriend would not be going anywhere near the herbs anymore until I specifically allow it. A week later, I catch this idiot out there with a pair of scissors, but it's only been a week and there is nothing to snip out there yet. Apparently, she cannot make meatballs without parsley, and the grocery store within walking distance is too far to go. One of my plants has 3 leaves on it. Seriously, the other neighbor doesn't dare to take anything before mid-July, and certainly he would never touch anything before I did. We looked at each other and for a few seconds, and then I just said, please get your herbs at the store from now on. I cannot believe I managed to think of that. Usually I think of a great comeback 10 minutes after the fact, so she turned bright red and went in the house. Hopefully she embarrassed herself enough to stay away. I don't want to have problems with this neighbor. He is nice and quiet and doesn't bother anyone. Tomorrow it will be a week since I caught her again and we will see what happens. Update, just got home and had a chat with the nice neighbor who told me that over the snipper and her BF had some kind of disagreement a few days ago and he looked like he was sick of her BS. He has not seen her car since, and yes, he is old and nosy. In addition, he also plans to buy some parsley and basil seedlings to put on his side of the fence out of her reach. I gave him some pots and cinder blocks to put them on. You cannot really see them from the other neighbor's yard unless you crane your neck, so that should work. With any luck, I will not be posting about her climbing into his yard through mine in the near future. And the next one is titled, Neighbors Ripped Up All My Plans. My husband and I have been dreaming to homestead together since we met. After a lot of hard work and saving, we finally left the apartment life and got ourselves a 2-acre house so we can start homesteading. We were excited because it already had a decent sized garden with tomatoes, peppers, kale, sweet potatoes, so we closed on the house on Friday. We had to work on the weekend, so when we came back on Monday to move in, some stuff, it was all gone. We think it was the neighbor because they oddly had a chain link fence with a gate that comes into our yard where the garden was. We also saw all the stakes in his backyard. We were heartbroken, but we have no real proof that they did it. Our plan is now to build a privacy wood fence only on the side that faces that neighbor and start from scratch. Which, in a way, it's better so we can plant them our way with a little more organization. Edit, I need to be clear, I'm not trying to start a feud. Obviously, I don't know anything about gardening, which is why I posted this here. I will try to start a conversation with them. I just thought it was weird to have someone come to my property to remove anything, but I see now that it could have been with good intention, so that is what I'm gonna tell myself when I go speak to them. Update, so I made a post about the neighbors ripping up the vegetable garden on my very first house. I had a lot of mixed responses from people thinking I was being entitled to teaching me about gardening, which yes, I don't know anything about, I'm trying to learn, and making me realize they might have done with good intentions and ripped it up because the season is over. Last night though, I saw the woman that lived there outside with a positive mind that they did me a favor, so I went over to introduce myself, and before I could even finish my sentence, she pretty much admitted to removing the vegetable plants because I did not deserve them because we did not plant them. I thanked her for clearing it up for me and walked away. This morning I got a text from the flipper I bought it from. I had texted her because during the whole purchase process, she went on about that garden that was full of vegetables we were about to enjoy. She let me know that those neighbors used to own my property and they sold it to her. They told her she could keep the garden. As they were renovating, they would make sure to just water them, but she said they never saw them come together or tend to anything. I was excited to come and water them because they stopped watering as soon as the offer got accepted and they look droopy. Either way, I am happy with my first house. I'm excited to learn about gardening. I bought some books and will be building the fence and installing cameras. I'm just gonna pretend it never happened and keep to ourselves. It's kind of weird having the previous owners though living next to me. And yeah, Ripe Stars, if you would have been in this situation, I'm curious, would you also have just kept to yourselves and not said anything, or would you have confronted the neighbors that pretty much stole something from your property? Let us know in the comments. The next one is titled Brother Demands My Inheritance. My 38 male parents died when I was 23 and my little brother Adam, 27 male, was 12. He inherited my parents' money in an account with me as payee until he turned 18, but he asked me to manage the account for him after that. It paid for his needs until he graduated and got a job in 2016, and it's set until 2020. I inherited the house, the family business, and massive debt. I planned to sell the business and the house and move him to live with me, but Adam had a massive meltdown and the therapist I sent him to insisted he needed to be close to friends even though we had no other family there and my entire life was in another country. Against my better judgment, I moved 4,800 kilometers back home, I quit my old job and broke my lease and tried to maintain a long-distance relationship with my girlfriend at the time, juggling my parents' business and trying to pay for a house with most of the mortgage left all by myself. I started dating Emily, now 34, when Adam was 16, and when he moved for college he gave Emily his blessing to move in with me. We got married when Adam was 21 and we are expecting our first child. Emily helps me run the business which barely survived 2020, the house is paid off and I'm starting to turn a small profit again. In 2020, Adam lost his job and I gave him the rest of his money in his account to support himself and he asked me to handle the bills. Every month I would send him some food money and let him know his updated balance. He does not have enough to pay for the remainder of his lease, October, and I warned him in January that Emily and I cannot afford to support him. I gave him two options, which were get a job and pay his rent and I would pay his food bill, or move home and live with us for free while working for the family business. He completely lost it, saying that it was my fault for sacrificing my life for the business and the house and that he should not have to give up his life, since I was supposed to take care of him. I told him I gave up my entire life for him and I struggled to keep the house and the business alive because he wanted me to. So I don't have cash to spare to support him because I have employees and a baby on the way. He insisted I sell the house and business and give him his half, and I reminded him that those were my part of the inheritance, not his, and that I paid most of the mortgage and I kept the business alive and I didn't want to give up everything I worked for. Our grandparents, mom's parents, late 80s I think, are the only living relatives we have. They live in a territory overseas and refuse to take Adam or help us because my parents did not leave them anything, so I was stunned when I received an angry phone call from my grandma calling me a greedy person and telling me I should be taking care of my little brother. I reminded her that he is 27 and needs to get a job and take care of himself. And I let her know I offered him both a home and a job with me and he said no. Update to the story: thank you to everyone who commented on my post and pointed out some things I had been unable to see for myself. A few days after my post was judged, I sat down and had a video call with Adam. I told him that by the time I was his age I had been raising him for 4 years already and I had willingly supported him through the global pandemonium. But now the job market was the workers' market and it was time to get a job again. He laughed and asked if I was serious and I told him I was, that I was removing myself as a payee on his account, period, because he had been an adult for almost 10 years and it was time for him to act like one. I said I did my duty and then some raising him, but I have an actual baby coming that I need to raise. I handed off all financial responsibility to him and wished him the best. He tried to backtrack and accept a position and home here with me, and I told him the offer no longer stood because I couldn't trust him to be a good house guest to my wife and eventually my baby, nor could I trust him to not pull the "my brother owns this business" card that a few pointed out too. I told him he needed to stand on his own 2 feet, not for me but for himself, and that he needed to learn to be independent. There was yelling and crying after that, but when I hung up I was dead certain it would be the last time I ever heard from my brother again. I heard from my grandparents during that time, but I told them point blank that unless they were offering financial support for a 27-year-old man, that I was done having any conversations with them regarding Adam and his inability to be responsible for himself. To my surprise though, he called me today to tell me he just got hired for a new job that he starts in 2 weeks, broke his lease and moved to a smaller, more affordable apartment and met his new neighbors, a brother and sister who helped move in his boxes and unpack his kitchen. They have already invited him to their next game night with their friends. He is still a little sore that I would not let him have part of our parents' legacy, but he realizes he would not have a new job and new friends if I had not kicked him into gear, and that with the way he acted, he did not deserve it anyway. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I would say OP definitely did the completely correct thing here and did his brother a big favor, not only by raising him, but also, as he said it, by kicking him into gear. Please let me know what you think about this story, because I'm curious whether you think that OP is the a-hole here or not, but I guess the answer should be obvious.